glitches when you don't want them to be glitches. Okay, Lori, want to do the roll call?
Okay. Mr. Battisti?
Here.
Dr. Bush?
There.
Mrs. Datata? Here. Ms. Mancini?
Here.
Reverend McCurd?
Here.
Mr. Murdoch?
Here.
Mr. Penninger?
Here.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
He's called in.
Lori, do we have any questions from the public?
No, we don't.
Okay. I think I would like to announce before we get going that besides this meeting tonight that is strictly regarding the budget, we will have another special Board of Education on May the 20th, which is next week. And we will also be meeting on June the 9th and June the 10th in regarding the budget vote. Without taking any more time, I'd like to turn the program over to Colleen.
Did we do the flag salute, Dr. Bush? Did I miss that?
Yes,
The flag salute? I missed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Curtis.
I'll start it.
What?
Bring up the
Sure.
I will,
Okay. Okay. We're going to have Dr. Cucciello begin.
it's the slide. You gotta wait though, right? Because he's got to.
Okay.
He's going first.
So first of all, thank you all for this extra meeting. And it's really an attempt to have the board see the budget before the 20th. We've got a real tight time frame. The governor's dates really have constricted what we usually do for a month or two into 3 weeks. So this evening's session is primarily to give the board a view. We have to adopt the budget by the 21st, and having the meeting on the 20th will happen. Also, we want you to know that after this evening, if you feel comfortable and feel as though you want to move the process along, we would be glad to do that, and that is to look at the possibility of adopting a budget this evening. But again, that's up to the board. I want to first of all commend the faculty and the community. You see this great T-shirt that I have on. A lot of folks gave money toward this. Faculty, a lot of the community. These T-shirts were used to deliver the senior signs throughout. I think up to today they've got about 150 of them done. They've got another 100 to go, and they're doing that in the next couple of days. So thank you to the community for all of their efforts in making this happen. We had one parent who spent a lot of money to get that beautiful sign on that bus. If you haven't seen it, she took it upon herself to decide that she wanted to do that for the seniors. So tonight's a chance for the board to see this budget. As Dr. Bush has indicated, the board received all of the updates. All of those folks, the cabinet members who gave those updates, are out there on the Google Meets tonight, so that if anything came up and you needed to have a question answered, they're all out there. Mr. Nolan, Christine, Nancy, and Sandra's here with us, but all of those folks are out there on Google Meets with us this evening. Again, this evening, we'll look at the tiers, the budgets, our recommendations, and especially explain to you where we are with budget number 3. We did not get any answers today. We may get them by Friday from the governor regarding the state aid runs, but I think you'll hear this evening, we're prepared for whatever is yet to come. Obviously, we'd like that stimulus date moved up if it happens, but we put together a budget that will allow us to go in different directions. So we are looking forward to your input this evening. So with that, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Colleen.
This is why everybody can hear, right?
And then see the slideshow at the same. It's right here. Okay. Can everybody see the slideshow? Well, it's coming up.
No, I'll drop off. Okay.
Can everybody see the slideshow?
Not yet.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
So first of all, we just want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. We trust that the packets of, we sent out information to the board last week, and we hope that was helpful and provided some of the necessary backdrop or the background of information to how we arrived at the numbers that we'll be showing you tonight. And with that, I know Dr. Cucciello already addressed some of the budget deadlines. Obviously, with the executive order that the governor came out with recently, he compressed a lot of reporting and a lot of items in a short time frame. So statutorily, the budgets across the state have to be adopted by May 21st. We already had a date set for May 20th, and as Dr. Clujo mentioned, if everybody's on board, maybe possibly tonight we vote. But having said that, after we get the budget adopted, the next step is to have the budget hearing, which will be on the Tuesday, May 26th. So the difference with the budget hearing again this year is obviously it has to be virtual. So we'll be doing a virtual presentation on all the items, and then somehow we'll have a question and answer or chat line, because obviously it has to have input from the public. So somehow we will manage either chat lines. Some attorneys had even mentioned having a phone in here, but hopefully maybe we can even say have questions and answer submitted to us prior to that. Obviously, with the governor's decree too, there's no in-person voting, so every district has to mail out absentee ballots that must be received here at the district office no later than 5 o'clock on June 9th, which is actually the budget vote date. We are estimating that we have 14,000 ballots that are going to be mailed out. Each one of those ballots will have a return envelope, prepaid envelope that comes back to the district, and it should right here again. It has to be here by 5 o'clock. It's not the date that it's postmarked. It doesn't matter the postmark date. It's when it actually physically arrives here. And we did get that clarification with the attorneys. As much as we can, we followed all the attorneys' advice with everything that's going on. It's a rapidly changing environment. We get changes every day. But as far as I know, Lori is working very diligently, making sure that we are ensuring everything is as best as we can to that executive order. And then the day following the vote will be the canvass, which is June 10th. And when the absentee ballots are counted, we have to do that live as well. So we do have a crew that we plan on having in the district, and we'll be counting those votes live.
He's looking stuff up now, and then he's gonna text me to see if I can do it.
Yeah, bring it back then.
So knowing what we know, obviously we were talking about the periodic adjustments. There's 3 periods that the governor has talked about. The first one ended April 30th. The next one's June 30th. And lastly, the final one is December 31st. We do know for a fact that the aid is going to be decreased, obviously because the state is not in a good financial situation right now with the COVID-19. And so hopefully, as Dr. Cucciello mentioned, we'll hear something soon. My general feeling is legislator met today. I think the governor is waiting for the federal government to release that money, which is why I don't think he has given any of the districts any indication on what that money is going to be at this point. So we're facing, along with the other districts, we are facing a lot of uncertainty. That April 30th look back ended. We were all hoping by May 10th that we would get that information. It still hasn't arrived, possibly May 15th. But again, nothing has been publicized or even allowed to let us know when that date's going to be. So right now, the budget that we developed was based on what we feel is the best guess. Governor had mentioned several times about 20%, and we'll get into that a little bit further in the upcoming slides. The question is, how do you develop a budget? Well, we did the best we could based on what we somewhat know, and hopefully, I think we've addressed a good portion of what we think. Districts across New York State were advised not to finalize their budgets until at least May 15th, but I know a lot of districts, such as ours, are trying to get everything they can because there is that short time frame of documents being sent out, ballots being prepared, postcards, budget notices, everything. What we do know for certain is we know New York State did not have a balanced budget. So we know their spending was above what they anticipated, and we know the revenues did not come in. Obviously, every day that the district is closed, everybody is losing that revenue. It's safe.
Quick question, Colleen.
Yep.
Okay, so if this is, we have that as a certain, and you have all those other uncertainties, how are we going to vote tonight on a budget if we don't know what the state is going to be giving us?
Well, maybe we're not.
Well, we don't have to, but that's a good question. But at the end of this, you might feel differently. Well, let's go through and see. I agree with you. We don't know, but I think what we're presenting you this evening might give you a better feeling of whether you can or not vote.
Is there,
Thank you.
Can we go through the rest? And we're trying to move it. And I don't say, if you can hold the questions off, it'd probably be helpful. Some of them may be answered as we move on.
well, this one's about the screen. The bottom of the screen's chopped off.
We fixed that, I think.
Not now, you didn't.
Oh, we
with
fixed
what
it
I
on our
did.
end. That's good. Thank you. We thought we had it fixed, John. Thank you.
Yep.
Is that better?
That's good. Yep.
That's good. Thank you.
What do you say? Do I have to go back? Oh, wrong link. Do you want me to move forward or not?
Can't see us.
It's on, it's broadcast on YouTube, however, the wrong link is on the district website. So on our YouTube channel, however, the link that goes to it is pointing to an incorrect.
Are we recording though?
Yes, we're recording and it is being broadcast. It's just that until, I called John and left voicemail already. I don't know what else we can do. It's up to you guys. I didn't just.
We're gonna keep going.
Okay. All right. That's up to you guys.
Okay.
I just want to make sure everybody knows.
We're having slight technical difficulties.
I gotta go back to budget one. Yeah, there.
Okay.
Can they see this?
Yes.
Can everybody still see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, let's obviously we're just going to do a brief recap on the budget proposal and the history. Budget one was the first budget that we presented. I think I believe it was back in March, if I recall. And in that budget, obviously that was the executive budget. With the executive budget, we had at least a 3% increase in our state aid, which was close to $3 million, which allowed us to go out with a 1.9% spending increase along with a 3.5 tax levy increase. Obviously, that was pre-COVID-19. When COVID-19 hit, the governor came out and said, okay, I'm going to have aid reductions. And at that point in his enacted budget, he left foundation aid flat, which meant that we lost over $1 million in aid from our executive to enacted. And in that budget, we still maintained a 3.5 tax levy increase, which is about $700,000, a little over $700,000. And then obviously with those spending reductions, we did what we refer to as our tier 1 reductions. So budget number 3, again, knowing that the governor has been talking about or saying that it's going to be roughly about another, or it's going to be 20%, we went ahead and took it upon ourselves and estimated what we felt that aid reduction is going to be. So overall, from the executive to now, roughly, there is about a 20% decrease. So when you're looking at budget number 3, our budget to budget spending from last year has been reduced by over $1.3 million, which is effectively one and 3/4 budget reduction in spending. That's with the tax levy reduced down to 3%, which now brings us to $626,000. And with that tax levy decrease, we used the 0.5 and added 105 to the fund balance, bringing our total fund balance to a little over $2.5 million.
Yesterday.
Our total reduction from the first to the current budget is close to $3 million.
Good after that. That's why I told you not to.
We were looking at all, obviously, first and foremost, we were thinking about the students. you know, these are big changes. We didn't want to take away from the students. So when our thought process, when it was all discussed between staff and administration, was really what can we do that's going to be the least impact on our student programming. Those were our priorities. Any of the programming that students are already enrolled in, we have P-TECH programs. We did not reduce that. Obviously, we want the kids to succeed, so we left that programming in. When we kept, as much as our maintained our staff level, in the first tier was really phase one, what we refer to as 2.0s, as far as vacancies, and then any other positions in that first round, we did not, we basically went through attrition and not filling any of those vacancies. We postponed any planned purchases of any type of equipment, and then we utilized a lot of our federal funding through the grants as much as possible in order to retain positions again. Again, as much as we can, we're trying not to impact the students. So here, I gave you a brief summary or snapshot of the budget reduction summary. Tier one was with the flat foundation aid, which in that reduction, when we had the last board meeting, there was 15 positions, which included 2 administrative positions that were reduced. Those were across the board, and those were realized through attrition and leaving those positions that were vacant unfilled. And other reductions, again, were eliminated planned custodial equipment purchases, and then some other BOCES and the BOCES instructional coach and other non-essential services. Then come back around, this would go further into COVID-19 when it really hit and the impact was known through the New York State and their expected additional shortfalls in revenue. We went ahead and adjusted to what we refer to as tier 2 and tier 3, getting up to what we estimate is a 20% state aid shortfall. And in that tier 2 and tier 3 reductions, there was 13.5 additional positions that were reduced. Those included some aides and an assistant principal, and the rest were instructional and other items. In addition, what we also did, we saved 4.42 positions by shifting those positions to the federal grants. So without those grants, we could have been up to almost close to 32, 33 positions. We eliminated the enhanced grant service. We had a grant service through BOCES. This year we had an enhanced, we just took that enhanced portion out. And in the budget, obviously, we had to take other reductions, and part of that is $75,000 in the sports budget. And then also the elimination of non-mandated transportation for private and parochial students, which is an additional $100,000, $106,000. So to be clear, Amsterdam as a city is not required, because we're a small city, to transport private and parochial students. So, and also when I mentioned those private and parochial students do not include St. Mary's because they're within our boundaries. It would be students that are attending McKeel and Perth Bible. In addition, there's the extracurricular clubs, and in those extracurricular clubs, we're eliminating $85,000, which includes the marching band, trying to think of other items, but everything that's extracurricular. Marching band, what else is there?
Anything after school related,
After
school clubs,
clubs.
student council, like a garden
Right.
club, stuff like that.
And then lastly, to round it all out, was some equipment, clerical subs, and then field trips. So as much as you can see, these were the least. When you really look at them, it's most of the items that were least impact on students. So with the
Are you talking about the high school marching band?
tax increase, so the 3%, when you look at the rates, every municipality within Amsterdam goes down. With the 3%, the city of Amsterdam would see on a $100,000 assessed home, a $27 per quarter increase. So when you look at it, it's really minimal overall, whereas it shifted. It used to be every other municipality had the increase, but this year, because of the tax base, the city of Amsterdam is going to receive the increase. So going forward, our next step recommendations, obviously, as we mentioned, the budget has to be adopted no later than May 20th, or if we can, earlier, if everybody is on board. Obviously, we're open to suggestions and what we can do, but we do have a lot of documents that have to be presented and get to the voters in time. And the governor did leave us very, very, very little time for this to happen. So the other option is we do not know what the revote process. So revote process is typically when if the budget is defeated, it would be the second Tuesday in June. So that typically is June 16th. We're voting on June 9th. So do you think we can do another revote by June 16th? I don't think so. So I'm not sure how the governor is going to address that or if he is going to address it. The other option that some districts are doing is to go straight to contingency once the budget is defeated. EMCDM, right at this point with our budget, we are pretty much at contingency. We've cut out a lot of items. There's slightly few other items, but when you go to contingency, you cannot have a tax levy increase. So we would effectively lose $626,000 in revenue. And what we looked at the $626,000 in revenue loss, if this budget is defeated, really looks at your elimination of all sports. And then some slight other additional staff reductions, not many, but really the sports, because sports is over $500,000 in our budget. And only the salary increases, when you're in a contingency, only salary increases are allowed for those with a collective bargaining arrangement. And then we would have to take our bus purchases that are out for proposition, those would also have to be eliminated. So what do we recommend? Do we go ahead with tier 1, which we know are state aid figures, but we know that now, but we also know that there's further state aid reductions. Do we go ahead and adopt a budget 3? That's really coming close to the 20% that the governor is talking about. Do we adopt that out of the gate with the language in our budget absentee balance saying indicating further reductions and or additions may be permitted upon state figures as they're known? This is what Dr. Cluccio, he's highly recommended because obviously we really cut to as much as we can at this point. So at this point, we can go ahead and start processing and moving forward with everything that we need to do. And then lastly, the decision needs to be made. If the budget is defeated, do we revote? And again, we don't know when that revote date is going to be, or if it's even going to be allowed with the governor's prediction. Because really, if you think about it, if you have to do another revote, that would be another $14,000 that would have to be mailed. That is a significant expense on all the districts. We're already strapped with everything else that we're dealing with. So if he goes ahead and says, yeah, we'll have a revote, we have 14,000 more ballots to be mailed out.
It's on top of what we're already doing.
Correct. So what we're asking tonight is if you can decide your direction tonight, allows time for all of us to get everything that's necessary. Obviously, the budget newsletter has to be prepared. That has to be in the hands of our voters by June 2nd. It's allowed 7 days before the vote happens. And then after that, we can go ahead and our next steps at the next board of meeting, and again, or early if you feel comfortable in voting tonight, we approve that budget, and then on that approval, all the documents are going to be prepared. Tax rates are set, and again, we also have to get our tax bills out there because July 1st is typically when our bills are in the mail or a week before. So we really, again, have a very, very short time frame, very short time frame. Our tax rates, So our budget notice and our letter, again, needs all that data, depending on what we have as far as budget, in order to get that timeline in process as quickly as possible. And obviously, obviously this is for everybody. I like to say we have to put a campaign of positivity out there.
Well, this is real low, and I got to keep this.
Teachers,
Are you ready for questions yet?
Gavin, your microphone's on, Gavin.
Okay.
We're hearing everything about what you're saying.
Okay, I'm having trouble here. That's why.
Oh.
I got technical assistance.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Did we go back to the regular screen now? Okay, we're going to be open for questions now.
Any questions?
So when you say the marching clubs, are you talking about the marching band itself will be eliminated?
The marching band, yep. At the advisor positions, every extracurricular would be eliminated.
This is for contingency?
Okay, so what if, remember we had our indoor winter track coaches. I think they actually volunteered for 1 year. Do you remember that?
They did that
So-
to get the program started.
Yeah, in order to get the program started, you're right, Gavin. So in order to keep our program going with continuity, could we not ask for advisors at all levels from the Honor Society on, if this year they could help out, especially with the COVID-19 like it is? Are we even for sure if we're going to have a season come up in football? Which that would be a savings of money if we're not playing all of our games and we're not going on travel with the buses.
No, we will actually have, we will still have our games. Our home games will be and Steve, Mr. Nolan, if you're on there, our home games are going to be in Gloversville. So there will be a bus that is necessary to still transport those kids.
So my question would be, why does football stay and the high school band go?
That we didn't eliminate. We didn't, okay. Oh, you're saying in the tier 2 and tier 3.
Well, what I
Right.
was asking is that you're saying the marching band. Now, originally, the information I got, we were talking about no elementary band, and now you jumped to the high school band. There's all.
That was in the first tier. So in the second tier, we eliminated all the clubs.
He was right, though. John's right. John, you are right. I was in tier 1 when the governor's budget was a different, less cuts that were anticipated. But you're right. It was just instrumental, and it was depending upon what level and how many were in each class. We were going to be looking at that. But again, the jump from 1 to 3 is a 20% reduction from what we anticipate to receive from the governor. Now, the reason we're talking is tonight is the reason for the board to give input. If with this input we anticipated, and why we had the meeting tonight is to go back to the drawing board and look at, okay, the board is in favor of this and not of this, we'd come back with different, obviously we'd have to go back and prioritize some of the other items that we had on the table that we took off.
Okay.
But again,
Is there any way that you can share some of the other items that were on the table so we can understand?
Right. I agree.
Also, Mr. Nolan is on. We saw $75,000 in cuts in athletic, and he's available if you need to hear some of those teams. What we did is we looked at the least involved, how many kids were involved. Was it a varsity sport? Was it a beginning sport? And so
Tell us.
list together.
So we're not the only district that's going to be facing these drastic cuts. Obviously, programming is first, and believe me, I know sports and band is very, very important for students, but where did we cut otherwise? Obviously, we cut close to, if you really think about it, about 30 positions. Even with the 4.42 shifting over to the grant funds, that's a big cut.
So the other thing, and I'm sure there's not even an answer at this point, is it's going to cause, in some areas, going to cause for larger class sizes. How is that going to work out with social distancing?
I didn't hear what the question.
He's asking how that's social distancing. So obviously, as school starts opening, we have the team, or what we call our SAFER program. And we're going to be evaluating those class sizes. And as we move forward, we'll be looking at those. We may be looking at half day for some students, alternating days on the other, and that would probably shift the class sizes, obviously. So those are all the items that we'll be facing, because COVID is actually making us think differently. So COVID is making us think as far as changing how we instruct and how those class sizes are going to be structured.
Okay, so there is a rumor that's out there that the governor has not released the numbers because we may be looking at online schooling as early as this coming year. Have we taken that into account? He actually has already called the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in to advise on this.
Do you happen to see who he has on that committee? He does not have any educators on that committee. Not
But
one
this is a
teacher.
committee that he's making the decision for the entire state education
No.
on for
He
next
can't
year.
make a decision. He has no educational people on that committee. Bill and Melinda Gates don't know anything about education. So he can't possibly come up with something that he's going to force down our throats. We cannot take that from people who are not educators.
So when you consider the size of New York State Teachers
Bill.
Union, I honestly do not think he will get that passed. The union has a very strong voting power.
I do think
I'd agree.
what
So
we are looking at is how good we are at teleteaching. I would say we are in the embryo stage. If we're that far, we may be in just the thought phase. We are finding out a lot of things about what we can't do well with teleteaching. We can get better. Actually, at the graduate level, they are better. There's a lot of ideas going out and about. I have a freshman going, my grandson. They think they may only take freshmen in next year. So all of these are hypotheticals, but tonight we're really trying to give you the worst possible scenario with respect to the financial picture and how we can manage it. And
okay, so I've got a question then. Let's start with the tier 3 that you have there. You show an administrator leaving, the assistant principal. What school is that position at?
well, that's a good question. What we would do, again, Mr. Roberti's on, so some of this he'll have, but what we're going to do is try to even it off, and we've done this in the past, half day here, half day there, kind of balance it off. If we've reduced 3 administrative positions, the assistant superintendent, CDOS, and assistant principal, and that's realized us about $350,000 in savings. But what we would do is we'd go back to the drawing board and look at it like, okay, we have 3 left of these or 2 left of these, and how do we manage it? We would do that the same with AIS, where are the needs? Remember, when you take 28 and a half people out of an organization that has about 350 teachers, and that's what we're looking mostly, just took 10% of your teaching staff out in this particular tier 3. So we would have to go back, Mr. Penninger, and balance it off as we would have to. One of the nicer things that's happening is we are looking at this redistricting, and we're going to be able to balance some of the class sizes with the numbers we have, because we can put people where they want to go now. We've got all that data as of May 8th, and as of this evening, we're trying to look of, can we save some money that way by balancing class sizes throughout the district, the elementary level.
Dr. Colucciello, you actually show on your tier 3 budget here with the 20% additional cut, you're showing that you only have essentially 5-6 teachers that you're looking at. And
16 more positions than 6 teachers, Sandra.
So are those positions open right now and we've not filled those positions? And so we're just going to be shutting down positions that have not been filled, that are not being filled?
Yes,
So those are,
there still are a half a dozen real people in those positions.
In tier 2.
Yeah, so tier 2 has about 6 or 7 that will be getting a pink slip. And the rest of them is basically we're not filling through retirement and unfilled spots.
okay, so essentially it won't be affecting human flesh teachers.
You are correct.
Tier 2, tier 2, how many are you?
There are a couple of other things that are going that I told the board about. There's still a potential retirements. We've been talking with members of each of the bargaining units to see if there's any interest in retirements, and that if those come to pass, we would come back to the board. It's got to be a win-win. It's got to be so that there's savings. we've got some ideas in mind of how we could save, and there are some possibilities where we might be able to recoup some of that to reinstate some of those tier 3. So if we came up with the best possible scenario, we might be able to recoup $400,000 or $500,000. Even if we gave some of it away, we still have the potential to make some money on it, if you will. And we're looking at all the bargaining units, and we've got interest from, I'd say, probably a half a dozen people at this time. So that's one.
Are you talking about bargaining units like ATA and the administrators, or bargaining units like the clerical and aides?
All of the above. What my theory has always been is, look, you have a workforce, there ought to be, if you're going to offer something out as an incentive, my feeling is it ought to be to all of the workforce, not just a certain segment.
Okay, so Dr. Colucciello, since you've been on board with us on 30 April 2019 until 30 April of this year, you know, how many people have you hired? I know it has to be over 100. You used to put a graph up on your flip chart there that you had over 100 people and all positions that you've hired. What has that total number been since you've been on board now?
So you're talking replacement people.
Okay. Well, no, hold on. No, we had, okay. So, like, yes, I suppose you could say that. We theoretically did not have a $60,000 a year transportation director before, but I mean, total people that you have hired, replacement people, and new hires because of a position being created.
I didn't create any positions except for the transportation. If you know of any, let me know.
Okay, so how many positions were hired?
I left the positions open.
Okay, then what was the 100 that you said you hired?
I hired a transportation supervisor. Vinny, that's it.
Okay, then all of the other positions, that you have been filling slots in where they were open positions.
Right.
How many of those did you fill?
Shelban, Gilderland, I can list those places they left for.
No, I'm not asking that. I just want to know a number, a quantity of people. How many people have you hired?
It's over 100.
Can we get back to the budget? Questions
That
about
is part of the budget. Reverend McCurd, that is part of the budget discussion that I'd like to bring up.
Okay.
How many people have we? Okay.
All right.
Because we had over 100 people that were in positions that were not filled, and in that year, I'd like to know how many people we have hired to fill positions that were opened.
We will get those
We'll get
numbers.
that to you. We can get that to you. That'll be pretty easy. With respect to how many we left open, we can give you that as well.
Thank you.
Together.
So those
Okay,
positions are both instructional and non-instructional. I don't
Correct.
know, are you focused on the instructional?
correct.
Or more focused on the non-instructional?
No, total number, Colleen.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
That's from April 1st on. We'll give you that date, that number.
That would be great. Of 2019.
Got it.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, part of my question was I was interested in trying to get into this conversation to ask a question about the potential of going to a contingency if the budget is not voted on. That we'll need to make it clear to our district what will happen to our sports. Because that one thing, just when I heard that with a contingency that there would be no sports, that's a major part of our community. So we have to make that clear if we decide later on to do that.
If you think back, I mean, if you look even at Johnstown, what happened to them, they had a major issue in their contingency. They had to go straight to contingency. obviously we don't want that, so that's why I had indicated that, you know, let's be positive on what we go out there. Let's vote and say, okay, let's do this 3%. I know it's the first time in a couple of years that we're asking for 3%, but that 3% is really equitable to your sports program. So
Right.
people you see in Price Chopper or wherever you are, mention that. It really, because now all of your voters have the luxury of having a ballot sitting in front of them, whereas before they would have to make an effort to vote. Now the vote's coming to them. They get a prepaid envelope that allows them to send it back. It's so much easier for them. So if you go out, and now they can put a vote out there. So if they're hearing that with contingency that you're not going to have sports, I mean, put that out there. Make it more yes votes versus the no votes. So that's why
Okay.
push that.
Okay. Just a couple other things, please. While I'm still on the ability to say something, the number you gave Sandra a moment ago regarding the actual number of teachers that's working now that will receive pink slips as opposed to those positions that would not be filled. Would you give that again?
I think it's 8.
So
2 in the first round
yeah,
on tier 1,
it's
6 on this one,
6
on tier 3. 8, Reverend, 8 positions.
Right.
Well, that will receive pink slips.
That's correct. 2 have already received them as of,
All right.
May 1st.
and we agreed with the ATA that they would give us until the 15th. Typically, that would have been May 1st, which we did for the first round.
Right.
And then extended the time for us this year because of COVID-19. And tomorrow being the 14th, we have prepared those other 6 letters, and we'll inform those 6 people tomorrow afternoon and then have their hard copies by the 15th.
And I appreciate hearing you say, Doctor, about listening to the board regarding some of the things that we would not want to see cut. And one of the things I would not like to see cut on tier 2 and 3 is the marching band. I think that would be a horrible. Now, I do not have a list of all of them. I could get that, all of the extracurricular sports. And that would help me to decide the other ones. But off the top of my head right now, I would seriously encourage us to rethink the marching band.
Thank you.
I think that.
Could I ask a question?
And also to, should we get the stimulus, right now it's last in, first out, we would do the reverse of that with these positions, and our letter says that. The people who are leaving, by the way, get a 7-year callback. That's in the bargaining, ATA bargaining unit. Doesn't matter if you're tenure or non-tenure, you get a 7-year callback. We tell them that. And then we tell them that should this fiscal change, our condition change, then they make themselves available. And again, we're looking at a lot of things. I mentioned one of them, retirement. We're looking at the stimulus package. You know, these are all out there. We have a plan to return to normalcy, just like the world has, but ours hopefully will know in the next couple of weeks. We think we're going to know the 15th on about the first level of cuts. And that, although they'll be deep, Colleen has done such a good job preparing for the worst, even though we didn't want to do it. But if things change, we've got next week, and that's why this evening has been called. We've got time to readjust according to what we hear tonight and what we hear Friday.
Dr. Cominciello, could I ask a question?
Sure enough.
These cuts that you have listed right now for tier 3, you know, the worst case scenario, I am assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that these positions that you have lined up to be cut from the budget these decisions have been made with the principals?
Yes, actually, that's a good point. We started out all together. This was every step of the way where The input began with building principals. And each of the sessions, we returned with what we thought tier 1 was. Actually, we told them about this meeting and we would be prepared. We're having a gathering tomorrow with them to give them the results of this evening. But what we do is we usually have a session and then they get involved. They go back and look at seniorities, what programs, how we would adjust accordingly. You know, if we're cutting this position, who gets this, what's left. So all of that work has been done already. So that depending upon what happens in the next few days, we're prepared to go in different directions with the principal's involvement. And also the cabinet that are all on, and they've been in it through the get-go. Mr. Nolan's prepared, you know, this happens, we'll do this. This happens, we'll do this. So we're ready to go. We have thrown out the idea of givebacks. We didn't end it. We haven't had any takers at this point. We've also asked for ideas in all of the things that you've heard. All of the bargaining unit presidents have been involved in each of these levels. Without the names of individuals, every step of the way was a meeting with the principals, a meeting with the bargaining unit presidents. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock, there's a bargaining unit presidents meeting online to get the results. And we said, you know, we're getting an input. We'll get the feeling from the board tonight. We'll be back with them. They've heard of tier 3s. The only people the new wrinkle in this is Perth Bible and McKeel. We didn't roll that out with those who were impacted at this point. Again, St. Mary stays because they're within the boundaries. Unlike rural and suburban districts, we need not transport to private parochial 15.5 miles. We don't have to travel outside of the city as a city district. In New York State, the only transportation you must have is for the handicap. City school districts in the state of New York need not transport anywhere outside of their district lines. So the people at McKeel, if they're listening, I'll be calling them tomorrow morning, holding off for the board's decision. That is my recommendation. It's 38 youngsters at one building for $55,000, and I think it's 15 in that neighborhood for $51,000. That transportation's been going on, not mandated. You've already given us the go-ahead on not transporting Head Start, and we have already passed that with the board. That was in the early tier 1 stages. And this would be additional transportation. $110,000 is a teacher and a half. And we looked at it from the viewpoint of how do we save as many possible positions in those classrooms.
We've heard someplace along the line that there might be mid-year cuts to state aid. Is there any truth to that?
The governor has put it out there that he has the ability. So let's say we pass the budget, we got July 1st, the state gets in worse position. He has that ability, again, he's going to do those periodic adjustments again going forward to take back more state aid, which is similar to what he did a couple years ago.
So what options do we, if that happens, do we have the capability to continue as we would under tier 3?
So no, what we did, Gavin's a great question. You must have been listening in. We've already anticipated tier 4. And we've had to do that once before. We called it the gap elimination.
Yeah.
We didn't get our checks in January. And we didn't get money we thought we were going to have. And at that time, I think in another district, we had made reductions. We've already looked at if there is a tier 4 in January, and this would be Mr. Roberti, who's listening intently. This would be on his watch, but we'll run these by him. By the way, he's gotten your last 2 board packets Mr. Roberti has received. So he's been in step with us all the way. But with respect to tier 4, we have already looked at that possibility. If we have to go back, Gavin, and say, okay, he's going to drop another $1 million on us. One of the things we kept sacred is the fund balance, because quite frankly, We think this is going to be more than a one-year problem. So
Oh, yes, definitely.
I know you've used that, but one of the things, the direction that you've always told us is save for the rainy day. It's pouring now, but it may not stop raining in January.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
So with this budget, you have the ability, if you wanted to vote, you can vote. And if there is additional state aid, and this is what happened in prior years, if they come out with a stimulus package, let's say it's after the budget vote, we can add that stimulus package in on your aid and adapt accordingly. Because with the budget language, you can actually say, this is what we adopt, subject to additional state aid, we can add positions back in there. Many years ago, there was ERA funding. They called it the jobs recovery. Majority of the districts cut. We got state aid during the mid-year. That state aid allowed districts to increase their budget back up because they received that revenue and positions were added back. We're hoping that's the case. Governor is hoping that's the case. So we can only hope that we'll get stimulus funding and have that ability to add those positions back or any programming back as well.
So your first proposal when we met in March was 3.5, and then the board, with their due diligence, listened to your presentation in regard to the transportation, the preschool transportation, and now the private school transportation. With that in mind, it was going to help reduce the taxes from 3.5 to a 3, and what you have presented to us tonight is the least impact on the students. And it's only when, okay, so if it's 3% that goes out into the community, because for several years now, all of the surrounding areas, their taxes went up, and the Amsterdam City School District stayed the same and went down. Well, now the tables are turned. It doesn't make it any more palatable because of this COVID-19 and people are not gainfully employed for the most part. So now we've come to a 3%, which was better than the 3.5. When you talk about dollars and cents, what is that? $29 per quarter for a $100,000 assessed home.
Got it.
Okay, so knowing that, now we can see what happens with a tier 3, which technically has the least amount of impact on our students and programs, because I'm sure taking a look at the clubs and the sports, where you have to be efficient, because if you don't have a lot of students involved in a particular sport or club, I mean, you can't have it all right? So here we are trying to decide if we go with the 3%, in hopes of not going to contingency, because that's when it really digs in and we really have a negative impact on the wonderful things that happen in our district. Okay, so again, going out into the public and talking about it, and saying what are the ramifications. I mean, you've touched every area. You've touched an assistant principal. You've touched AIS. You've taken a look at elementary, but not a lot. But I mean, I'm sure that when you took a look at that, you also took a look at the impact in the schools and the class size. The other thing is the redistricting, which is going to help facilitate, hopefully, a little bit at a time, the cost of transporting these children. So parents are already saying, I want to take my child and put them in and that's going to happen over a period of years. That's not going to happen all at once, because when we started the magnet schools, that happened a little bit at a time. So now we're pulling back in a nice incremental way, which is positive. So I hear you when you say you don't want to raid the fund balance. I don't think any one of our board members would ever want to get in a position that the Johnstown School District got into. We have a high elderly population. We have a high population of low socioeconomic families. So it's a challenge, and I guess that's why as board members, we have to really take a look at this information, the recommendations, and give it a lot of thought and consideration, because our number one priority will be and always will be the children. The second is being fiscally responsible, and that's why I'm happy with Dr. Fuggio's
It's the children.
balance, because, you know, we're doing a budget this year, but it's also going to have an impact on next year. So you have to think about it. It's not just 1 year at a time.
I think it's going to be at least 3-4 years.
I feel like they've done their due diligence. We have a master of a superintendent here. We have certainly a state aid guru that knows about the money. I mean, if the board wants to just suck it up and give it some thought, because we are meeting next week, that's a decision that we have to make. And with all that in mind, our decisions up to this point in time, this is a decision, a difficult decision, but we're not the only ones in the boat. So I think we have to take a look at our culture, our community, all of the facets that are impacting us. But our primary focus are the children, the least impact on the students. I don't think any one of us who are sitting here tonight ever want to go into a contingency, because Reverend McCurd has already talked about the negative impact that would have. That being said, I said to myself, I'm going to sit here and not say anything tonight. So I've said what I wanted to say. I'm just going to leave it at that, because I think every one of us as board members have to talk about what do we want to do. We do have time. We're having another meeting next week. It's I don't know. I think they've done a stellar job. I don't know how much more they could dig in. I just don't know. Any thoughts?
$6 million swing from the first budget to where we
How
are
much?
now.
This is a good point that Colleen makes.
So when you look at our first budget presented, which we refer to as budget 1, to where we are now, that is a $6 million swing. $6 million. When you look at that $6 million and what we actually came up with, I truly believe, I think we did the best that we can for our students at this point, as well as not laying off a lot of teachers, because that was ultimately one of our goals too. We don't want to put more people out on the street. So that was our primary goal when we started looking at all these cuts in different areas to look at. Obviously, transportation was an area. Maybe some people are going to have to bring their kids. But when you look at who's housed in these buildings, we focus on those kids. And I think that's what we really, really did strive to arrive at when we did this budget.
So 3 times a week, we have Google Meets with about 40 people on it. The basic part of every one of these budgets has been reviewed at each of those sessions. Beginning from the tier 1, 40 people listened in on each of the parts as we could give it up. Obviously, we hadn't had some of it done, and obviously we waited till you folks saw them. You saw tier 1, you saw tier 2. There were 40 people involved in each of those sessions as we got to those tiers. So as you go out there, and I've said this before, we need our friends now. We need our friends more than we've ever needed them. We need the people who value Amsterdam's programs. We need them to support us more than you've ever needed them.
I have a question.
When 14,000 people get envelopes, do we have one more friend than who doesn't want it to happen? And that's what I look for. I know you're going to have those who oppose. All I need is one more person for these students to get the program that we can give them under the worst conditions we've seen physically in 100 years.
I have a question. We were having technical difficulties before. Was that because the public was not able to hear our meeting? And if so, is the public able to hear it now?
I believe we're okay.
That's Eric.
Is that Eric?
Can you ask Eric?
We can ask him. We're gonna text you.
Because we did a vote once before and the vote was nullified because the public could not hear it.
Curtis?
Let's see. Control room,
Yeah.
we'll check.
Curtis?
Yeah, Eric. Eric.
Yeah, we know we have 22 viewers online watching live.
Okay, great. Thank you. Part of the thing also, Dr. Bush.
To listen in, you vote if you wanted to vote on the budget tonight as far as moving forward, but the voters also have the ability to view it again at the budget hearing, which is going to happen on 26. So it's key that we put out there, obviously in the postcards and everything that we're mailing out, that date will be advertised. So there's a key point for the taxpayers and the public to chime in.
You know, I agree with that. That's wonderful. Dr. Bush brought up a point that I wonder, I worry sometimes because it really gets overused. The fact that we're comparing ourselves to Johnstown School District, and I hate the idea that we have to use the athletic program. We'll cut the athletic program just like Johnstown did. If you look back at our budgets through the several years, you'll see that we were getting money that Johnstown did not get. Johnstown, they were having to go to their fund balance because we didn't have to go to our fund balance during those years. And yet we were able to maintain and not go above the cap at all. And to the point, even the comptroller of the state of New York wrote us up because of the amount of money that we had in our reserves. We were taking in a lot of money, not necessarily all of it from the taxpayers, but it was coming into us in various forms each year. So we have never fiscally looked like Johnstown as far as, what we were receiving in. I can't remember in the past 3 or 4 years, Johnstown receiving a letter from the comptroller saying they have way too much money. So I beg to differ sometimes with that argument about comparing us to Johnstown, because there is a big difference between the two of us.
Curtis,
we get money and they don't.
Curtis, my point was that as far as this fund balance, every year I have sat on the audit committee with you and taken a look at the money that we have. And we would get our little hands slapped because the amount of money that we had in the fund balance was more than what we were supposed to have. As we sit here tonight, I am more than happy to know that we had more money in our fund balance than what we were supposed to do, because guess what? It's going to help us right now. So my point is that we don't want whatever we have, even you cannot compare us to Johnstown because every school district is different. My point is that I'm happy that we had more money in our fund balance than what we were supposed to have, because right now it's helping us to maintain what we need to maintain for the benefit of our children and also our school district and our taxpayers. And so I see that as a plus. My point is not to delete the fund balance, and it's not my intention to compare us to anybody, but I'm just making an example. I'm happy that we are not in that boat, and I hope that we never get in that boat.
That's a perfect example.
If we go to contingency, we do not have the right to give sports. Sports are automatically gone with contingent budgets. They used to have 3 or 4 things. But when he talks about extracurricular, you cannot let people use your buildings under contingency. It used to be textbooks. Now they give you money for textbooks. But sports and extracurricular are out under contingency. That's not a decision that we made here. That's a decision the state ed has. And so.
But Dr. Colucciello, I agree with that. That's why we need to get our numbers right. If you you don't remember, but within 5 years, we hired assistant principals. We were without assistant principals for many, many years. Those are non-mandated positions. Where right now, it looks like I don't know what you're calling the balancing act, but that is one of the positions that you're cutting under the tier 3 is a assistant principal. That is the savings of money that we,
I'm saving them for tier 4.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a tier 4.
I hear you on that, but I hear you.
And you could take a little more out now. I said to my cabinet, you better have a little bit of fat because you're gonna need it January. Things are not, any economist will tell you, it takes 2 to 3 years to come out of this. I mean, that's the smartest economist, not me. You're not coming out of this by January. Look at the food lines. We need some things left. I said today, we could cut more. Then what do you do in January? You're going to be back here again with Mr. Alberti's leadership, which is going to be great. And you're going to be looking at what do we do next? I don't want to sound like an alarmist. I've always in my career planned for the worst. And that's how I've gotten through it. Because it doesn't always come to be the worst. But if it does, I'm ready. So tier 4, you've mentioned some things. You've mentioned some things about putting some stuff back. I had prepared for that when we got here. I said, we're going to hear some stuff that this board has a choice on, and we're going to go back and look at it. And that's why we're doing tonight. But do I see this solved? I see a black cloud coming over us this week or next. That really Colleen's done a masterful job getting ready for their black cloud. If we have to go to contingency, it's an easy one. The state forces us to take out what we spend, $568,000 on boards. 568 is about equal to 3% tax rate, which you lose on contingency. They kind of coincidentally match. 3% is 600,000, 568 is sports. So are you putting out there and trying to hurt the public? No, I didn't make the law. I'm putting it out there to plan, say, what does this community want? And it's not my decision on the sports. Got to talk to state ed. The 3% will get you back what the state says you can't do. And that's the trade-off. And Mr. Penninger, you're right. There are some things that we have to cut. Be ready. There's nobody I have talked to in the economics field thinks by January we're going to be back to normal.
No, we're not going to be back to normal.
We may be back here with Mr. Roberti saying, okay, what did Ray plan to cut? Do we still want to do those same things? So we planned for those. This, with some tweaking that you've given us, we can do. We can come back for the 20th. It's not a problem on our part. We're squeezed in a lot of stuff, and Colleen's giving me a solid look.
I'm just going to move my cot into my office.
So you could say, and we've got a few more items on the agenda, but you could say, okay, tonight, we're not bending your arm back. We've given you the best shot we can for this scenario as we know it as of 7:32 on the 13th of May. The unknowns are still out there. We'll fill in the blanks with what we've got. But, in today's marketplace, your nimbleness is the most important thing you can have. We've prepared to be nimble on this. It's how you can move to the left, move to the right, or change things. So we've prepared to be nimble. We've got alternatives, and that's why we're looking for you tonight.
Question. All right, so what if the board says, okay, let's go with the 3%. And then all of a sudden, through whatever graces of God,
Miracle.
the governor says, okay, the federal government is now going to give us so much money. What impact? I mean, what would we do? Come back
It
and say?
depends on when he says it.
Depends on when he says
When he depends on when he says it.
Because your tax
That's a
bills-
big thing.
Okay.
I've already heard Washington saying Memorial Day or whatever, but that depends on what it says. the board that sets the tax rate in August.
We have to have our bills out by July 1st.
July 1st.
Right.
So there is a,
June.
if you had a budget pass, let's start with that, the 3%, and a windfall came, you've got some time till when? If you got a windfall,
After June?
a miracle, no,
After June?
yes, after June.
That leaves us 3 weeks to try.
3 weeks, so you asked a question.
To get it
I'm
back
answering
going.
it, I'm answering it.
Yeah.
You may not like the answer, but you have 3 weeks to be nimble.
Colleen,
Yep.
how many taxable residences and businesses are there in the city of Amsterdam?
49% of your taxpayers,
What percent?
49% of your taxpayers live in the city.
Do you have that number at all, Colleen, off the top of your head?
I can get the number.
Yeah,
of
we have the
parcels
number.
for
I
you.
did the math. I don't remember the
I
number,
don't know the parcels.
but I did the math. It's 49%. I didn't
So
bring the-
what we're doing is we're taking the tax rate up to $2,674 per $100,000 home
how
assessment.
much more than last year?
2,674. So that's over. Is that about $100 increase, right?
Right.
It's $107. 107, almost 108 per household per
You
year.
round up, I round down.
$108.
Okay,
So from a.
and that's per 100,000. Now we have several homes. We do have several homes in Amsterdam that are over 100,000. Okay. All right, but in contrast, the town of Amsterdam is going to be going from. They're going to be going down close to what is it? 1,730.
1,700 per year in their tax rate, tax dollars. That's good.
Okay.
$1,730.
And what do you know? How many taxpayers are there in the town of Amsterdam?
I can get those numbers for you.
We'll
Curtis.
get you those.
Okay, Ray, what's the at least the percentage?
Pardon?
49% in the city of Amsterdam. What's the town of Amsterdam percentage?
I only want to know the city. I only looked at whose taxes are going up.
Okay. All
Those
right.
other people I thought would send you a card.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
So technically, if all the other surrounding areas, their taxes are going down, and they're also voting in the
That's
city,
51%.
isn't that correct? All right, so 51%, they should be happy as a lark that their taxes are going to be going down. So
Absolutely.
hopefully they'll send in their ballots approving whatever is decided. So,
This will be the first time in 4 years that I have a tax reduction.
yeah. So
Colleen, say personally, the first time in 4 years, she has a tax cut.
I say yay.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
I can imagine. I can imagine the town you live in. I'm happy for them also.
Well, thank you.
So I need some clarification.
that John?
So if we were voting on a budget tonight, are we voting to eliminate that 75 on sports and the 85 on clubs, which would eliminate the band too? Is that what we're approving tonight?
If you approve that, yes, you are correct. You will be approving the cuts that are there unless you tell us to make adjustments. Yes, your answer to your question is yes, unless I've heard one thing to look at, and we will look at. We've also looked at, okay, if we come back on the 20th, make those adjustments, we would show you what some of those adjustments meant. Because we're going to have to push, just like a balloon, when you push on one side, the bubble starts on the other side. Colleen's already thinking of what she would cut. But we will work through and see where we are.
Colleen, where are we at? What percentage are we over the cap voting that we're going to be presenting?
The cap is 8.6.
We're not over our.
We're not over at all.
No, our
What's he asking?
the tax cap is 8.6.
Yeah, we're below the property tax cap.
8.6. We could have gone to 8.5999. Well, we could have
had a vote on it anyway.
Yeah, not for you folks. I said something about going closer to the cap. I got slapped. I'm just kidding.
Another option is you vote on the budget tonight, and then with the dollar value. So let's say it's $75 million. That's our budget total that we're going with, and allowing us the flexibility to adjust those extracurriculars. That is, an option for if you vote on the total budget package, and then allowing us the opportunity to adjust it. With your obviously communicating with you after we're done with it, saying, okay, instead of the 85, we're going to take a position here or something over here.
So we would adjust according to your direction.
Within that $75 million.
But we're going back and we will be having to vote on that and ratify that change.
No, you're voting on
a dollar amount.
The dollar amount. You're not voting on what's involved in the budget. You're voting on the total dollar value.
Yeah, and that's where the balloon comes in.
Yes, the resolution is on a dollar amount.
On a dollar value.
And
not specifics.
Right, and we would then adjust accordingly, come back and say,
within that budget.
We did this, and this is the direction you gave us, we did this.
Right.
So that we intended that would happen. And the public does the same thing. They vote on a dollar amount that we can tax the people. They don't vote, it's a marching band, that's your direction to us.
That's fair.
So,
That's
you
fair.
wanted to vote on the 75 million, what we have in the budget tonight.
We have a resolution prepared in case.
What are your thoughts? Do you want me to do a straw poll? Curtis, I'm going to start with you.
No. I'm saying we hold off until we get further direction from the governor and on the numbers that he's going to give us. If he's going to come up or down, it's kind of. I understand how you're wanting to do this because we're under the time frame, but we should know something by early Monday for sure.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean,
John?
tonight's Wednesday night.
I mean, the best thing would be able to be to wait. I am heartened with the idea that we're voting on an amount rather than specifics. But obviously, if we kind of knew what we were dealing with, would be a better scenario. I don't feel strongly. Well, I do kind of feel strongly. I'd like to know what's in front of me.
That's fair.
I have a feeling that we're postponing the inevitable, but I think I would agree to wait and see if the governor comes up with anything.
That's exactly.
I'd rather book the time on my very busy social schedule and come back next week again and do it then.
I'm with Joe Marie. It probably is the inevitable, but I will check my calendar and see if I'm open for. Right now I'm open for just about any day of or night or probably for weeks to come. So,
yeah.
Kat, your thoughts?
Well, waiting next week seems reasonable to me based upon what we've already heard the superintendent say that he'll look at some of our suggestions and then we might be able to hear before we vote. For instance, I mentioned not eliminating the marching band, and I'm hoping to hear next week, okay, we've adjusted that, and that's not part of our plan. The other suggestions we've heard tonight will give us an opportunity to hear that. So I would propose to wait next week.
No problem. Deanna?
What is the likelihood of us getting any sort of validated closure from the governor within the timeline that we've discussed? Can anybody offer any insight on that end?
Could you repeat that? Repeat that.
What is the likelihood of us getting the information that we're seeking within the timeline that we've allocated here?
What's the likelihood of getting the information that we're looking for?
Oh,
Deanna, he may be cutting our numbers. Who knows what he could be coming up with? That number, he can slice off a whole nother percentage.
But what I'm asking is, have there been conversations specific to that topic, or are we just kind of flinging things at the wind and hoping that something develops over the course of the next week?
The federal stimulus package has not been offered. The next federal stimulus package has not been offered up to the Senate yet. They were looking, doing a look back period to see what the first round of stimulus funds happened. So they were saying at the earliest that they would even consider, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, would be not until after Memorial Day. So where the governor is hoping that we're going to get that federal stimulus funds to pull us out of this situation right now, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't
So we don't think that we'll have any more information within the next week, is what you're saying?
As far as the federal stimulus, where the governor is hoping that'll pull us out of our situation, no.
Yeah, but we're really looking for guidance by the governor, not necessarily, he's going to be well aware that that's not happening till after Memorial Day. And hopefully he comes back with some numbers for us, not anticipating that.
Gavin, I didn't forget you.
I know. I'm just patient. Wow, just wait till next week. Something might shake one way or another, and we can make a final decision then.
Okay. Okay. So you heard that their comfort level is to kind of, they're not saying no, but they want to make sure that they have all the information as up to date as possible that they can. So I guess we'll wait.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So let's say the governor does not come out with anything until the 19th with numbers. Are you comfortable in getting your information? And again, we have a very short turnaround to get all this, the budget newsletter and everything prepared. If he doesn't come out with any kind of figures until the 19th, how comfortable are you turning around and voting on something the next day?
Well, they would have to.
Yeah.
you got to do it by the 24th.
You have to.
You're going to do it. You're going to do it on 20th or 21st. We weren't looking to now, but we're okay. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. My prediction is Colleen's pretty good in what she's done. You're probably going to end up with Colleen's prediction, 20% reduction. He put that on the screen 3 or 4 times. He didn't do that for nothing. He put schools 20% reduction. In the last 3 times he's shown that slide, schools, hospitals, and counties. We're first on the list of reductions. Under schools, he put 20% reduction. Your business manager did all of her work on 20%. So I think she's probably going to hit it right on the head. I think, we'll be back on the 20th.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
Okay.
Thank you
20th.
very much. Colleen, nice job.
Gavin, were you saying something?
No, I
Gavin,
just said wait, just wait, and we'll do it. We'll do it. Do it on the 20th.
Okay. Okay, we have a couple of resolutions in our packet tonight. The first one, 490, was consent resolution. I'm sure that you looked at all of them. 491 was the approval of previous minutes. 492 was the school calendar adoption. And 493 was the parent liaison translate contract. Do any of you have any comments, questions in regard to any of the resolutions?
You can make that.
No, we're good.
Okay. John, you have any questions?
Nope. I'm good.
Joan, do you have any questions?
No, I'm all set.
Deanna? Okay. Kent?
I'm okay.
All right. How about Curtis?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So, 493, the parent liaison translator contract. Do we have someone currently in that position?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been there since the beginning of the year.
Since June of last year.
We brought her in last year.
She's paid out of
Yeah.
community funds, community schools funds. Yes. Great,
How
great
many-
job.
Colleen, how many hours did that person put in?
It's $30 an hour. With no
No,
additional.
how many hours did our previous person put in?
I don't know if you have that for that.
We could get that information.
So she, in times like this, she's become very instrumental, with the ballots and with the newsletter. Everything has to be translated, and especially even with our school lunch program, feeding, all the students, her translation services have become, obviously have been needed much more.
How many hours has she been used?
No, I don't.
We have to go, I would have to look at it.
Well,
I know she's surpassed her
She exceeded her.
her hours for translations for sure.
Okay, but she's needed.
She's definitely.
well, she does all our translations
That's what I'm saying.
for,
Website, everything.
but where she's been the best is with teleteaching with our ENL students. She's,
Okay, so that's what I'm kind of wanting to know, because if she's doing things that are like district related, why can't we have like a clerk, a bilingual clerk do that job? I'm just asking.
suggesting an additional position.
No,
We
Mr. Pettinger.
No, I'm recommending that we have a clerk that speaks Spanish, and we have a very large population of Spanish speaking people in our community. I would hope that we would have someone on staff that would be able to speak Spanish other than using an outside service. Why can't we have one person in the entire staff that knows how to speak Spanish and can be bilingual? Why can we not use that person? It's almost unbelievable that we have 0 bilingual employees working on our staff right now.
No, we actually have other clerks who are doing this.
We have, for Title I, part
Right.
on funding has to go to a parent liaison.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. I just now read it. I just now saw the Title I grant. Sorry about that. Okay. No further questions.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments about any of the other resolutions? All right, Isaac, could you draw up the approval for the resolutions?
It'd simply be resolved that the Board of Education, for voting purposes, combines and approves resolutions 490 through 493 with one vote.
Private sponsor?
I will.
Gavin?
Okay, Mr. Battisti,
Yes.
Ms. Datata,
Yes.
Mrs. Mancini,
Yes.
Reverend McCurd,
Yes.
Mr. Murdoch,
Yes.
Mr. Penninger,
Yes.
Dr. Bush.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion from someone to adjourn the meeting?
I will.
Okay, Kent, need a motion to adjourn. Roll call, Lori.
Can I get a clarification for our next meeting, Dr. Bush?
What would you like to have clarified?
Okay, the date and time,
May 20th at 6 o'clock.
May 20th at 6 p.m.
Wednesday, May 20th at 6 p.m.
So if we got information on the 15th, would you want to move that up so we have time to do?
Yes.
I can
Sure.
ask for it if Colleen gets clarification on May the 15th, which is Friday. Would you like to change the Board of Education meeting from the 20th to closer to Monday?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that okay with everybody? Anybody say no?
Yep.
Okay, they're all in
Oh,
Okay, roll call, Lori, to adjourn.
Mr. Battisti,
No, am I voting on adjourning?
yes.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
Ms. Datata,
Yes.
Mrs. Mancini,
Yes.
Reverend McCurd,
Yes.
Mr. Murdoch,
Yes.
Mr. Penninger,
Yes.
Dr. Bush.
Yes. Okay, everybody, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Wear your hat.